All right, good afternoon. Yes, we have a lot of international days that it's gonna be very exciting. Yeah, Anade, those are for you. Yeah, less quizzy today. A little bit of, anyway, just stay tuned and be patient. All right, good afternoon. I'll start off with a statement on Senegal. I can tell you the Secretary General is closely following with concern the developments in Senegal. The Secretary General urges national stakeholders to engage in dialogue, uphold a peaceful political environment, refrain from the use of violence, and to ensure the holding of an inclusive and transparent presidential elections within the framework designated by the Senegalese constitution. The Secretary General reaffirms the United Nations' commitment to continuing to support the consolidation of democracy and promotion of peace, stability, and development in Senegal. Quick update for you, or not so quick, update for you on Gaza. The Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs say the unprecedented density of Rafah's population make it nearly impossible to protect civilians in the event of ground attacks. OCHA says the congestion in Rafah has reached a point where normal routes are blocked by tents set up by families seeking any flat, clean surface available. In the last 3 months, the city has produced the equivalent of a year's worth of garbage, according to what municipal authorities are telling us. OCHA says the scarcity of food, clean water, health services, and sanitation facilities have led to an outbreak of preventable diseases. The humanitarian coordinator for the occupied Palestinian territory, Jamie McGoldrick, says that fuel generators and spare parts are urgently needed to improve people's access to clean water, noting that the southern Gaza desalination plant is only working up to 15% of its original capacity. Our humanitarian partners estimate that about 100,000 families in Gaza need shelter support, including tents for winter weather and other supplies. Since October 7th, they've distributed some 40,000 tents, primarily in the areas of Rafah, Khan Yunis, and the middle area of the Strip. An additional 28,000 tents are in the pipeline. That's according to what we are told by our humanitarian colleagues. Just last week, they also distributed about 3,000 bedding items and 5,000 dignity kits in Khan Yunis and in the middle area, as well as 1,500 bedding items in North Gaza to those who are not residing in UNRWA shelters or with host families. Also want to mention that the Special Advisor of the Secretary General on the Prevention of Genocide, Alice Nderitu, issued a statement today echoing the Secretary General's earlier statement concerning the International Court of Justice's consideration of the South Africa-Israel case. One travel announcement, that's from the Deputy Secretary General, Amina Mohammed, who at the invitation of the government of the United Arab Emirates will travel to Dubai on behalf of the Secretary General to participate at the World Government Summit 2024, being held under the theme of Shaping Future Governments. The Deputy Secretary General will also engage with senior government officials in the UAE and other key stakeholders. She will be back in New York on Wednesday. Couple of updates for you from different situations in Africa. I'll start with the Democratic Republic of the Congo, where we are concerned by the escalating violence in the Masisi territory in North Kivu province. Heavy clashes in the town of Sake on the 7th of February led to the deaths of at least 7 people and the displacement of some 17,000 people to Goma, which, as you know, is the capital of North Kivu. As we mentioned, fighting in the area in recent months has pushed many people from their homes towards Goma. This is putting an additional constraint on humanitarian resources and the city's ability to accommodate new arrivals with shelter and basic services. Goma is already hosting 500,000 displaced men, women, and children. Although some have started returning to their homes, the volatile security situation in the area means that there is a risk of further displacement. South Kivu is also being impacted by the current crisis in the Masisi territory. Since the beginning of the month, which is just February, And according to humanitarian workers on the ground, some 100,000 people fleeing the region are now seeking refuge in Minova and Bunyakiri, and both are towns in South Kivu. Despite the security challenges and the situation, humanitarian workers are providing aid, including clean water, health care, some basic necessities and services to displaced people both in North and South Kivu. For their part, our peacekeeping mission says they're also worried about the heavy fighting between the M23 armed groups and the Congolese armed forces in the same areas in North Kivu province, including in proximity to a number of UN peacekeeping facilities. Peacekeepers are also continuing to do their utmost to protect civilians, including through their support of the Congolese armed forces. Operation Springbok, which we mentioned to you a few days ago, is conducted jointly with the Congolese armed forces, continues to go on. As part of this, a quick reaction force moved to Sake in Masisi territory on Wednesday to help with the situation there. Peacekeepers are also protecting the main routes leading towards Goma and Sake to prevent rebels from advancing towards both cities. Peacekeepers also have engaged members of the M23 group in the Sake area. Turning to Sudan, where millions of lives have been impacted in this war-torn country, the consequences, as you can imagine, are even worse for children. As Sudan's brutal war hits its 300-day mark, the UN Children's Fund estimates that 3.5 million children there are projected to suffer from acute malnutrition this year, including over 700,000 who are expected to suffer from severe acute malnutrition, which is the deadliest form of malnutrition and requires specialized, uninterrupted, life-saving treatment. UNICEF is the sole provider of ready-to-use therapeutic foods used to treat children suffering from severe acute malnutrition. With partners, the agency secured the pipeline of these essential foods through July and are implementing a scaled-up response to prevent a massive loss of life. This includes mobile health and nutrition teams, find and treat campaigns, and support to frontline health workers to prevent the total collapse of life-saving health services for children. But the agency's executive director, Catherine Russell, said that it is also what is also needed is safe, sustained, and unimpeded humanitarian access across the country and especially across lines of conflict. This year, UNICEF is appealing for $840 million to reach 9.9 Sudanese people with assistance, and that includes 7.6 million children. Last year's UNICEF appeal was only 28% funded, so we hope this year's numbers will be higher. Moving to South Sudan, Nicholas Haysom, the special representative of the Secretary General there, condemned an attack on a humanitarian convoy that was delivering much needed aid in Jonglei State earlier this week. The convoy, which was escorted by UN peacekeepers, was traveling to Pibor area, which is close to the Ethiopian border. In one of the villages on the way, attackers emerged from bushes and opened fire. Apart from a vehicle being damaged, fortunately, there were no casualties. The peacekeepers fired back and repelled the attack. Following the incident, local authorities rapidly dispatched security forces to the location. We urgently call on the national authorities to investigate. Moving back to this hemisphere and to Haiti, where the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs tell us of the worrying situation and the impact of escalating unrest in the capital, Port-au-Prince. According to our human rights colleagues, more than 1,100 people have been killed or injured since January of this year. That's the deadliest month in the last 2 years. Gang violence has impacted all parts of Port-au-Prince metropolitan area, as gang members continue to clash for control of territory and have escalated their activities in the areas outside of the capital. In recent days, outbreaks of deadly violence during demonstrations have caused major disruption to humanitarian operations, impacting our plans to reach civilians in need, especially those at displacement sites. There are more than 313,000 displaced people around Haiti. Road blockage and movements restrictions are also impacting healthcare workers and compromising people's ability to access the most basic services. In the south of Haiti, the distribution of life-saving aid has been affected, by difficulties accessing road and the country's ports. One humanitarian organization in the Sud department was, one of their warehouses was looted. This will have a major impact on the humanitarian work in the coming days. More than 1,000 schools across Haiti, including in Port-au-Prince and other urban areas, have also been temporarily closed since mid-January due to ongoing demonstrations. The violence has pushed up the price of food items by almost 25% in a context where 44% of the population is food insecure. Traveling back across the ocean to Ukraine, our humanitarian colleagues are telling us that hostilities in the east and the south of the country are continuing to damage civilian infrastructure. According to national authorities, more than 120 houses and civilian infrastructure facilities, including education and healthcare, were damaged between today and yesterday. Since February, WHO, the World Health Organization, has documented 1,555 attacks. Sorry, that's since February 2022, so it's in the last year. 1,555 attacks on health services, impacting healthcare providers, supplies, facilities, warehouses, transport, including ambulances. These attacks also killed and injured civilians, including healthcare workers and patients. Schools have also been affected, with more than 3,800 schools reportedly damaged or destroyed during the same period. And that's what the government is telling us. And our humanitarian colleagues warn that these attacks are disrupting access to critical health services and education, often in areas heavily impacted by the war, where people are already vulnerable, including older persons, children, people with disabilities who rely on assistance to survive. Just to note for the record that yesterday, Caroline Ziadeh, the head of the UN mission in Kosovo, briefed the Security Council via video conference on the latest developments that took place, the latest developments in Kosovo. She expressed deep concern over the impact of unilateral actions that clearly fall within the political dialogue process and the governing agreements. She warned that such actions increase tensions and weaken the potential for lasting peace across all communities in Kosovo, adding that she will continue to call both on Pristina and Belgrade to engage actively and in good faith with the EU-facilitated dialogue, the venue for tackling the most sensitive policy issues that impact all communities. A couple of good international days for you. One of my favorite ones, that tomorrow is World Pulses Day. Do we know what a pulse is? Yeah. Yes, a lentil. We love lentils. Dried beans, lentils, and peas are the most consumed types of pulses. My second favorite day is also tomorrow, and that is the International Day of the Arabian Leopard. Who knew? I knew. Yeah, I just learned. There may be fewer than 200 Arabian leopards left in the wild, but by celebrating this day, we seek to restore the Arabian leopard as a flagship species for conservation and sustainability in their native region. And on Sunday, we celebrate the International Day of Women and Girls in Science. In his message, the Secretary General said, "It is time to recognize that inclusion fosters innovation. Every woman and girl should be able to fulfill their true potential." We should have an International Day for Women and Girls in Journalism. Agreed. Indeed. We have to have money. Today is the last day to be on the honor roll, so we want to thank Bhutan, Bulgaria, Czech Republic, Germany, Italy, Monaco, New Zealand, and Portugal. Yes. Thank you, Marta. They have all paid their dues in full and all officially belong on the 2024 honor roll, which has a total of 51 member states. We encourage member states to continuing paying, and we will mention them every time they pay in full. Edith.
Thank you, Steph. A couple of follow-ups and a question. The statement on Senegalese elections, is that going to be delivered to the government?
I mean, it's a public, it's a very much a public statement, and I have no doubt our colleagues on the ground will also give it to the government.
Also, does the Secretary General have any comment on the Russian election officials banning the only candidate opposed to the war in Ukraine from competing in the presidential election.
Not at this time. My understanding is that the process is still going through an appeal.
And a follow-up on the Secretary General's press conference. The transcript is very welcome, but I think the vast majority of us don't speak Portuguese.
But
Sorry.
it was Portuguese and English.
Was the English
Yes,
there?
the English was there as well.
Oh, all I saw was the Portuguese, and I said, oh.
And we did have our very nice Spanish over here. It's not a triangular conversation. And our very nice Spanish interpreters dove in and did the Portuguese as well. But it should have both languages. Ms. Salome, and then we'll go to Benno. A microphone is used. I know.
Thank you, Steph. Given your comments about the grave situation in Rafah and so many people sheltering there, I'm wondering if the Secretary General has any reaction to recently announced plans, or Netanyahu has asked the military to prepare for an evacuation of Rafah, of the people there. Would the Secretary General support that, given the situation on the ground there?
We are extremely worried about the fate of civilians in Rafah. I think the Secretary General was pretty clear when he was asked about what would happen if should we open up the gates at Rafah, which, I mean, we, not the UN, because they're not our gates to open. I think what is clear is that people need to be protected, but we also do not want to see any forced displacement, forced mass displacement of people, which is by definition against their will. Go ahead.
So would that constitute a violation? I mean, forced displacement, that is technically illegal.
We would not support in any way forced displacement, which goes against international law. Benno.
Follow up to the situation in Rafah. Do you understand what Netanyahu means when he says the army should prepare for people to be evacuated? Because where should they go? Do you?
It's a very valid question, and I think the Secretary General is not the only leader on the world stage to have expressed his concern about the Israeli military action that we're currently seeing, or that are being pre-announced, so to speak.
Okay, then I have two more questions. But if somebody else, if you want somebody else following.
If you're offering,
Okay.
I'll go to Deji.
I just have a follow-up on the Rafah situation. So, does the UN agencies there, UNRWA maybe, has contingency plans? Like what if the offensive started? What the UN agencies can do there?
Well, I mean, there's nothing much we can do, right? I mean,
Exactly.
we're trying to keep civilians fed. We're trying to keep civilians clothed. We're trying to keep civilians have medical treatment, keep them dry and warm. It is nearly impossible for us to protect them from tank fire, from artillery shells, and so on. And because we all see what is going on currently.
So let me ask this question again, because I think we really want to know if this offensive started and Netanyahu said those civilians should be evacuated, where exactly can they go? Are they going back to the north?
Well,
I know
we're not going to force anyone to move anywhere, right? So I cannot answer that question.
Okay. Speaking of Rafah, another thing is you're talking about the humanitarian delivery. It's not in truck numbers; it's in volume. Mm-hmm. So, what is the volume of the humanitarian delivery now?
Not
Because comparing to like a month ago, would that be
I'll
less?
try to
or-
get you some comparative figures.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Alan, and I'll go back to you.
Thank you, Stéphane. There was one meeting in the SG schedule for today. He was supposed to meet the Speaker of Knesset, and now it disappeared. Is it cancelled by the Israeli side, and why?
Well, I mean, we found out about the cancellation when one of your colleagues called me and pointed out to a statement that was issued by the speaker saying he was canceling the meeting because, and I'm paraphrasing, but because of the statements made by the Secretary General yesterday in the press conference. I think you'd have to ask them exactly why. I think at least from my vantage point, and I think probably from the vantage point of most journalists, the Secretary General yesterday didn't say anything that he hadn't said before. I have to say his door remains open to any visiting delegation from Israel that wants to meet with him. I mean, today, there was again, as there is every Friday, an assembly of families linked to the hostages outside of his residence. Again today, he spent time with them and he engaged with them and said in answer to a question that was asked by one of the people there, he said, frankly, if I were prime minister, he was asked, what would you do? And he says, if I were still prime minister of Portugal, prime minister of any country dealing with this situation, my first and primary focus would be on getting the hostages freed. Pam?
Sorry. Yes, a follow-up to that question. The statement by Amir Ohana, who's the Speaker of the Knesset, in canceling, said it came because of the Thursday press conference where the Secretary General called on Israel to stop fighting, even if Hamas uses human shields. He also said that he intended to try to convince the Secretary General of the Israeli position and hand him a book documenting what his argument with still images. Number one, did he give you, was this book given to you even with the cancellation? And second, what is your message back to him about what the Secretary General was saying, which appears to be more
I think
balanced?
what the Secretary General said is what the Secretary General said. I mean, he spoke in very plain language. Again, I don't think he said anything that different yesterday that he's been saying in the past, whether it's on the need for humanitarian ceasefire, whether it's on the need to see an immediate and unconditional release of hostages. Again, we found out about the cancellation first through the media. We then received an official notification. I'm not aware that a book has been received. I would just say, I think it as an observation, I would say it's difficult to say you want to convince someone when you're not going to meet with them. Benno, sorry, go ahead, Ben.
Thank you. There's no intention to reschedule, right?
Well,
I mean, as far as- it's up to them.
I mean, I guess if you cancel lunch with someone, if you want to reschedule, it's your responsibility.
Thank you.
Thank you. On Wednesday, the investigation led by the former
French
Foreign Minister Colonna will start.
Yeah.
Can you give me a bit of granularity about where will she sit? Where will she go into Gaza? How much do you have to do with that? Actually,
Nothing.
Okay.
Right. I mean, that's the whole point of an independent review group. What I do know is that her and her team are already in touch with UNRWA. I would encourage you. I think in the statement we issued, there was a contact for one of the research organizations, but I'm not keeping tabs on her, and I should not. Excellent. Lenka, please. Let me not forget you this time.
Thank you, Steph. Good to see you. I have a question on the Carlson interview, please. So he's one of the first Western journalists to go to Moscow and speak with Putin. I wanted to ask, does the Secretary General believe that showing the Russian perspective to the US public could help to improve the relations? And then, did he watch the interview?
No, the Secretary General did not watch the interview, and that for the very good reason that when the Secretary General finally makes it home at the end of the day, the last thing he does is to turn on the news. That
don't have time.
regardless of what is being shown, he's deep in his books about medieval history.
Okay.
Okay, so your first, I mean, listen, I have no particular, I have no specific comment on the interview. We always believe that, you know, the work of the press is important, and it's always important to hear from people. But I'm not, I have no specific comment on that particular interview. And as for the impact, I think that will be for journalists to judge.
Okay, thank you.
You're most welcome. Okay, I think that is it. Sorry, Pam, please.
Just one question. Will the Secretary General watch the Super Bowl, and is there a team he's rooting for? Thanks.
I think you can guess the answer. No, I think the Secretary General will not be watching the Super Bowl. I may have to explain to him on Monday what the Super Bowl was.
And so you will be watching?
I will do, like I usually do, I watch things for him. Edie.
Thank you.
A follow-up on Haiti.
Yep.
With the decision of the Kenyan final court on the deployment of Kenyan police to Haiti, still in the balance and not known what it's going to be, is the Secretary General talking to other countries about possibly leading a force?
I'm not aware of any other conversations that may be happening. It's not to say they're not happening. I'm just not aware. We very much hope that those member states who can provide funds will provide funds to the trust fund. We hope that those member states who can provide personnel or equipment to a multinational force will do so. Not everything should be on the shoulders of one country. Thank you all. Have a wonderful weekend. Thank you. Whew, Jesus.